All right, so we all know the Army is all about readiness, right?
Always locked and loaded.
But how do we actually get ready to win? That's where ADP 50 comes in, specifically, Chapter 3 on preparation.
The good stuff.
It's like the Army's playbook, making sure we're not just prepped, we're primed for success.
Primed and ready to rock.
We're going deep into military preparation today.
Deep dive time.
And we've got excerpts from ADP 50 Chapter 3 to guide us.
This chapter breaks down everything.
It goes from understanding the battlefield to those pre-op checks, the nitty-gritty.
Every little detail matters.
And to help us connect the dots, we've got expert speaker here bringing in that crucial military perspective.
Happy to be here.
So, expert speaker, what's the big deal with preparation? Isn't it just common sense stuff?
It's tempting to think so. I mean, we've all heard proper planning prevents poor performance, right?
Right.
But Chapter 3, it emphasizes that preparation, it's a deliberate process, not just a checklist. It's about turning plans into action.
And not just action, but action that gets results. It's about maximizing our chances of success.
Exactly, minimizing risk. It's the bridge between having a strategy on paper and having boots on the ground ready to execute.
Okay, so how do we make that leap from strategy to action? What does ADP 50 actually say about that?
Well, it breaks it down into 5 essential functions, and they build on each other, which is important.
Okay, lay it on us. What's the first one?
First up, you got to improve situational understanding.
So knowing what's going on around you.
More than just knowing, really understanding it. It's easy to assume we know what's up, but this chapter, it emphasizes digging deeper.
You're saying we need to be constantly checking our assumptions, looking for new intel.
You got it. Things change fast on the battlefield.
Faster than a speeding bullet.
Exactly. Like that saying, no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Got to be ready to adapt.
Always be adapting. So how do we do that?
Means constantly updating our understanding of the enemy, the terrain, even how civilians factor in.
Civilians on the battlefield. That adds a whole other layer of complexity.
Absolutely. It's not just about knowing where the enemy is, but understanding the entire operational environment. Because that environment, it's dynamic, always changing.
I see what you mean about digging deeper. It's more than just knowing the enemy's position. It's understanding the whole picture.
The whole 9 yards.
Okay, so that's situational understanding. What's the next function?
Number 2, developing a calmer understanding of the plan.
Okay, so everyone's on the same page.
Exactly. Because you could have the best plan in the world, but if even one person is out of the loop, things can fall apart.
That's a recipe for disaster.
Chapter 3 is really big on clear communication here. Confirmation briefs, thorough rehearsals, making sure everyone knows their role inside and out.
That's like a football team, right?
Exactly.
Everyone needs to know the play, where they need to be, what to do if the other team throws a curveball.
Right, and that kind of coordination, that only comes from constant communication and practice.
Practice makes perfect.
Which brings us to the third function, training and becoming proficient on those mission-critical tasks.
Okay, so this is where we go beyond just knowing the basics. This is about mastering the skills that make the difference.
You got it. We're talking individual skills, but also how units work together.
Especially when you've got different units that haven't operated as a team before. That's got to be tricky.
It can be. The chapter actually uses Operation Iraqi Freedom to illustrate this. Think about Third Army. They had to integrate all these different units, different experiences, different ways of doing things, and they had to prep for a large-scale operation under pressure.
Talk about a logistical and strategic puzzle. How do you even begin to wrangle that?
It all comes down to those first 2 functions, understanding the situation and making sure everyone understands the plan. Then it's constant communication, comprehensive rehearsals, meticulous coordination.
Sounds like a lot of work.
It is, but it's crucial because it's not enough for individual units to be prepared. The entire force has to act as one cohesive unit.
Moving in sync, like a finely tuned machine.
Exactly. And that kind of synchronization, it's crucial for the 4th function. It's task organizing and integrating the force, having the right people.
In the right place at the right time.
Exactly. And that takes us to the 5th and final function.
The grand finale.
Ensuring those forces and resources are positioned where they need to be.
This might seem straightforward, but I bet it requires some serious planning to pull off.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking coordination, logistics. You got to be firing on all cylinders.
It's like that moment in a movie when the hero arrives just in the nick of time. Seems effortless, but a ton of work went into it.
Perfect analogy. Speaking of pulling off the impossible, Chapter 3 has some incredible examples.
They really drive home how crucial these functions are.
Real-world stories.
The one that always comes to mind for me is the Rangers at Pointe du Hoc on D-Day.
Scaling those cliffs.
Talk about a situation where preparation was everything.
Absolutely. Chapter 3 talks about how those Rangers, they spent weeks, even months getting ready. They knew that terrain was going to be brutal.
I can't even imagine. So they trained on similar cliffs, right? Somewhere along the English coast.
They did. Every detail mattered. They even practiced with different ropes, different ladders, figured out what worked best.
Didn't they also use those rocket-fired grappling hooks to get up the cliffs faster?
They did. They had to get up those cliffs and fast under enemy fire.
Talk about high stakes. It's incredible how all those little things, the planning, the training, it all came together.
It all makes a difference, especially when you're facing those impossible odds.
But Chapter 3 isn't just about history lessons, is it?
Not at all.
It also gives some really practical guidance for leaders at all levels.
It does. And if I had to pick a few key takeaways, I'd say prioritization.
Okay, so prioritizing what needs to get done.
Security.
Got to keep everything safe and sound.
Then supervision.
Making sure it all gets done right. Let's break those down a bit. Why is prioritization so important in this whole preparation process?
Well, because time is precious, especially in the military. Commanders have to be clear about what's most important.
So their units are spending time on the right things, not getting bogged down.
Exactly. It's about cutting through the noise, focusing on what really matters.
No time for distractions. What about security? That seems pretty self-explanatory, but I'm sure Chapter 3 digs deeper.
It does. It highlights how vulnerable we are when we're prepping for an operation.
Because you're on the move, setting up, it's easy to miss things.
Exactly. You've got to maintain vigilance, put those security measures in place, be ready for anything.
Stay alert, stay alive,
Well, yeah.
always. And finally, supervision. Why is that so important?
I'd say it's about leadership, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. You can't just tell your soldiers what to do. You have to be present, engaged.
Leading by example.
Exactly. Overseeing that preparation process.
So it's more than just making sure people are doing their jobs.
It's about making sure they understand why they're doing it.
That's about empowering them, right?
Yeah.
Giving them the why behind the what.
Exactly. And that's how you build a team that's not just competent, but confident.
Ready for anything. Which is what it's all about, right?
Absolutely.
And while we've covered a lot of ground, Chapter 3 goes even deeper.
How about
Talks about pre-operation checks, terrain management, even making sure your comms networks are good to go.
It's incredible how much goes into being really prepared.
Isn't it? All the little things, they add up.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of little things adding up, I think the biggest takeaway from all this, from Chapter 3 as a whole, is that preparation, it's not a one-time thing.
It's a lifestyle.
It really is.
Mhm.
It's an ongoing process, a mindset,
What
really.
set of readiness.
Yes. And that goes for everyone,
Yeah,
from the newest private to, well, the highest levels of command.
absolutely. Everyone's got a role to play.
Because when we're truly prepared, we're not just reacting to what's thrown at us.
We're shaping the situation. We're in control.
And that's a powerful feeling.
It is.
So, to wrap things up, the next time you're getting ready for a mission,
Any mission.
big or small, remember, it's about more than just going through the motions.
It's about owning it. Being that adaptable, proactive soldier.
Knowing your stuff, understanding the bigger picture, and being ready for anything.
That's what sets us apart.
Absolutely. Well said, expert speaker. And listeners, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Until next time, stay ready.